Hello, everyone. Due to some recent conversations that I've been having with people regarding my decision to forsake my homosexuality, not even to allow what I was doing not too long ago, where I would, for a long time, I just called myself bi, and I figured out, well, okay, that sits nicely in the middle. It doesn't really do much, and it kind of lets me think freely, or so I thought, about my approach to that kind of a lifestyle. However, I came across a realization recently, and it's that if I'm going to be called to follow God, to follow Christ, then it has to be in a manner wherein I submit myself fully to that path, mind, body, and spirit, every bit of me. And because, as per the design of my being, who I am on this earth, what I am intended to be, what I believe anyway, is that I was born to be a man and born to fulfill the purpose of a man to the best of my ability. Now, this doesn't mean that I'm going to go out and have kids. I don't know what my life will bring me. I might pull a Paul and just go my whole life without any, and I will, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what I had to understand was the ideology behind the concept of fatherhood itself. And in order to understand the true concept of fatherhood, even if I don't go and have kids of my own, again, I just have to, as long as I understand the reality of that idea, and that is an idea from God, that is God's design. He made man, he made woman, and he said, all right, when you two come together, you can make more. That's the design, that's the blueprint. And I had a few people recently question me on this, and basically my testimony goes that if I want to shy away from that, the basis of what God designed us for, then I'm shying away from God. I'm shying away from a portion of God's design. I'm rebuking it. I'm pushing it out of my life. Therefore, I'm going to push more of God out of my own life. And I don't want that. I don't want to push things out of my life that come from God. So I caught myself, oddly enough, this was the night before, this was the night before Charlie Kirk was killed. I came across a video, and I was just going through some Hope Corps videos on Instagram, and I've come across videos like this in the past, where you have parents or a dad and their kid, and they're, having a good time. And for a long time, I would put myself in the shoes of the kid and think about my relationship with my own father. And I would just think, how lucky am I to have such a great dad? I'm very blessed. And I'm also very fortunate in that I have a dad who is willing to share his love with so many people, that I have a lot of extended family, they're not blood, but they're just friends who are so welcomed by my family, that I have even more family in friendships that are forged through the strength of the bonds of our kinship. And for the first time ever, again, the night before Charlie Kirk died, I saw a video, and it was of a father, and he was doing some, I believe he was doing some deadlifts in his garage, and his kid was there cheering him on. And for the first time ever, it just happened. I didn't intend it. It just happened. I put myself in the shoes of the father. And I've kind of wobbled on doing this or not doing this in the past. But for the first time ever, it just happened full on. And all I could think was, oh, if I had this tiny little being who looked up at me and cheered me on and was just so happy and excited to exist with me. Wow. And just in that moment, I felt such an overwhelming presence of joy, just from the idea itself of genuine fatherhood. And I started to, I physically looked away from my phone, and in a denial way, like I don't really want to look at this. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, hold on. Why don't I want to look at this? Why don't I want to look at and feel the way that I feel right now? Why would I push away something that made me feel so wonderful? And all I could think while looking away was, oh, but what if I date a guy? I can't have my own kid if I date a guy. Sure, there's adoption and whatnot, but I can't appreciate even the idea of a being truly coming from me that I could actually raise with someone else from whom that being also came from. And I sat there for a moment, and I didn't know what to think. So I just went to sleep on it. It was already late in the evening, and I went to sleep. And I woke up the next morning, and I realized that my desire to shy away from the basic design given us by God was also followed up with a desire to do something else specifically, to possibly pursue a relationship with another man. And when I woke up, having slept on it and thought on it, and then I prayed on it. And as I was praying, I made the decision then and there, I am not made for this. I'm not made to desire men like that. I'm meant to desire the company of other men in the spirit of kinship, in the spirit of brotherhood, not as a possible spouse or partner. And when I came to that realization for myself, when I came to that realization of what the intent of our design is, it was a no-brainer. I realized, I woke up then and there. Okay, let go. Let's see where this goes. Let's see what happens. Let's see how I feel as the days go by as a result of all this. And then, just that afternoon, my sister, I went upstairs to get some coffee, and my sister, who rents from the same house that I do, was up there already and told me that Charlie Kirk had been killed. And I didn't know what to think or how to feel, because I had just made this massively critical decision for myself based on my faith. And then when I went back and I did research into what Charlie Kirk truly stood for and what he said, beyond all of the flair and flabber that people are trying to post about him being this or that, calling him all these awful things, but I looked at what he did at his core, and I realized that man dedicated himself to his faith so wholly and so faithfully and so powerfully that he was then killed for it. But instead of thinking, I might die if I truly go on a full Christ following path, I might, that's it. People are willing to kill us for taking a stance in what we believe. And I made a second decision the very next day after coming to this, or the very same day, because I had made the official decision that morning. After being affected the night prior, later that day, I made another decision. There's no going back. I I have to do everything I can not to fail this. I will stumble. I will fall. I will I will stray along the way, but I have to pursue this one path. Because if he can do it, if he can chase his belief into death, because he believed that his faith would be rewarded after death, then I would be a coward not to. And since then, I have been fighting to find, discover, uncover, and share as much of the truth as I can find before it gets removed or deleted or pulled away from the public eye, or going to the extent of putting it up in front of people who come to me only with the lies and bits and pieces out of context. And to simply put it in front of people and just say, yeah, well, here's the rest. Here's the rest of what you're not bringing me. It kind of changes the story, doesn't it? Most of the time, people will just change the subject, which only unfortunately goes to show how much people are willing to sink further into a lie just for the sake of their own comfort. And now that I'm on the other side of that, now that I have refused to allow myself to pursue a life of being either gay or bisexual, now that I am doing my best to protect myself from straying from the straight and narrow path, I'm realizing how much I did the same thing. Some people are telling me that this has come up a few times now that I've announced or made people aware of what I've decided to do. And people will ask, well, where in the Bible does it say this? And well, there's really not that many places. It's hard to defend with the Bible alone, but it's in there. Well, then some people will say, well, that's in the Old Testament. That's old. That's outdated. That was replaced by the New Testament. I don't believe that the Old Testament was replaced by the New Testament. There were many laws, like, for example, not to consume certain animals, like pork. And it was because it was unclean. Well, that part is that's very important. The unclean. Why was it unclean? Well, we know today with our technology and the growth of our sciences that we have discovered that, yes, a lot of pigs are carriers of many diseases, and it's a little difficult to actually keep them from capturing and holding on to those diseases and then passing them on to us if we consume them. But we have also learned to identify what was unclean about them and how to make them clean enough to eat. So, in the Old Testament, when we were told don't consume bacon, it's unclean, it wasn't because it was a sin just to eat bacon. It was because it was carrying diseases that we didn't have the technology or knowledge to identify at the time. But we were given a hint. It's unclean. We were given an opportunity to look into it, and we were given science by God. So, he gave us a hint. He said, it's unclean. But pay attention to how that's worded. Now we can eat bacon. So it's not about the New Testament replacing the Old Testament. It's about the Old Testament being fulfilled by the New Testament. And many of the things that were told in the Old Testament still apply, such as, hey, I'm not super good at wording this. This is how I interpret the Bible. The people in the Bible who said basically just don't be gay. This is how I interpret it in my head, because this is how I would say it if I were to try and explain it now. What applies now after the New Testament, I would say, look, I'm not very good at explaining it, but to the best of my knowledge, if I want to be a temple for Christ, if I want my body to be a part of the church, if I wish for the Holy Spirit to dwell within me, then I'm going to make as much room as I possibly can for that. Which means I have to accept God as wholly as I can. So if I push out certain parts of the design of the blueprints that He made us with, then I'm pushing a part of God out. I'm not making room for Him, not truly, because I want to keep this little pocket over here that says, well, I could date a guy though. But now I have no room for this part of God. I'm not making room for Him. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it right. I'm not pursuing God. I'm asking God to follow me down this other path. And I realize that's not how God works. Now I know that's not how God works. He said, no, you. God said, you follow me. I'm the only way. Put down everything else, and I will do everything necessary to fulfill you, in spite of those desires you think you want to keep with you. Since I made that decision, I have since had two separate dreams. They have no context. They were silly, whatever dreams. But for the first time in nearly 20 years, I have not had a nightmare. I dreamt twice, and they were not nightmares. For context, I have very, very severe insomnia. When I sleep, if I can manage to get to sleep, my transition into sleep is incredibly difficult. But once I fall asleep, it's rock bottom. I'm way past REM. I'm in deep, deep sleep. And I typically don't generate dreams, or I don't hang out in REM or the stages of falling asleep and being asleep, where dreams are typically generated. I don't hang out in that area long enough to generate dreams that are worth remembering. I blink and I wake up, and that's it. And when I did dream for those 20 years, if I dreamt, it was because I was having difficulty sleeping, or I was uncomfortable, or I was sick. That's when I would dream. And for 20 years, I've never, ever, ever had a dream that was not a nightmare. For 20 years, I've never had a dream that was not of me being killed or mutilated, or holding someone of a family member in my own arms as they died and being helpless to save them. For 20 years, that's all I got. Not a single regular or good dream, but in the last 2 weeks alone, I've had 2 normal dreams. And within the last month and a half, probably 2 months now, but anyway, within the last 2 months or so, I had been specifically praying to dream again. I had specifically been praying to dream again because a lot of people I know in the creative spaces will say, oh, I had this amazing dream about all this and that, and it gave me so many ideas, and all I could think of was, if I made ideas based on my dreams, everyone would just die. It sucks. But I made a decision, and in doing so, God said, hey, now you're getting it. Oh, by the way, here's one of the things you asked for. Now that you're closer to me, I can actually hand that to you. So, that is my testimony thus far. I hope that this, for those of you who have listened all the way to this point, I hope that this is something that helps you reflect on your own life the same way that I had to stop and reflect on mine. A short, happy life will be nothing compared to an eternal life of joy. So be careful of what happinesses the world can provide, if it gets in the way of the joy that you can have through Christ. God bless you all.